My son's French fiancée called me an ugly cow in her native language, thinking I couldn't understand. I smiled politely and poured her more wine. 3 hours later, I casually mentioned to her parents that immigration might be very interested in our conversation, but let me back up and tell you how I discovered my future daughter-in-law was nothing more than a gold-digging fraud with a charming accent. It started on a crisp October evening in Austin. David, my 35-year-old son, had finally brought home the mysterious French woman he'd been dating for 6 months. Camille Dubois was exactly what I'd imagined from his breathless descriptions. Petite, elegant, and blessed with that effortless style French women seem to master in the womb. Her English was flawless, carrying just enough accent to be charming rather than difficult. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, taking both of my hands in hers, "David has told me so much about you. I'm so excited to finally meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man." I warmed to her immediately. After David's string of vapid girlfriends who barely remembered my name, Camille's genuine interest in our family felt like a blessing. She asked thoughtful questions about the photos on my mantle, complimented my cooking with what seemed like sincere appreciation, and even helped clear the table without being asked. David beamed all through dinner, clearly smitten. "Camille speaks 5 languages fluently," he boasted, squeezing her hand. "She's been teaching me French, though I'm hopeless at it." "Oh, you're being modest." Camille laughed, eyes twinkling. "His pronunciation is, how do you say, endearing?" We all laughed, and I found myself thinking David had finally found someone worthy of him, someone with substance, intelligence, and genuine warmth. Someone who might actually stick around long enough for me to get attached. That feeling lasted exactly 47 minutes. After dinner, David excused himself to take an important work call. I was in the kitchen loading the dishwasher when Camille's phone rang. She answered in rapid French, her voice carrying from the living room with the casual confidence of someone who assumes no one around her understands. "Here's the thing about assumptions. They can make you sloppy. I spent 4 years of my youth in Lyon working as an au pair to pay for college. My French might be rusty, but it's far from dead." And what I heard in those next few minutes made my blood run cold. "Oui, maman. She seems harmless enough," Camille was saying. "Old, clearly desperate to keep her son happy. She'll be easy to manage once we're married." I froze. A dinner plate suspended halfway between the table and the dishwasher. "The house is lovely. Bigger than David described, and yes, there are definitely family assets to consider. He mentioned his father left them very comfortable." Her laugh was musical and cold. "Don't worry, I've already started working on the inheritance angle. Americans are so sentimental about family legacy." My hands began to shake, but I forced myself to keep moving, to keep the normal sounds of cleaning going while I listened to my future daughter-in-law dissect my family like specimens in a lab. "David is perfect for this. Naive, generous, and completely infatuated. The green card will be simple once we're married, and the divorce even simpler once I have what I need. 2 years maximum. Then I'll be free to return to Paris with American citizenship and enough money to live exactly as I choose." The plate slipped from my numb fingers and shattered against the kitchen floor. "Mrs. Thompson, are you all right?" Camille appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. "Perfect performance." If I hadn't just heard her true colors in crystal clear French, "just clumsy," I managed, kneeling to collect the pieces. "These old hands aren't what they used to be." She hurried to help me, movements graceful and considerate. "Please let me do this. You shouldn't be cleaning up after hosting such a wonderful dinner." The irony was so thick I could taste it. This woman had just explained to her mother how she planned to manipulate and eventually rob my son. And now she was helping me clean up broken dishes with the tenderness of a caring daughter-in-law. "I have much experience with cleaning," she said with a self-deprecating laugh. "I worked in hotels in Paris before meeting David. Very humbling work. But it taught me to appreciate when others make effort for me." Another lie delivered with such sincerity that I almost believed it myself. Almost. David returned from his call, apologizing profusely. "Sorry about that. Crisis at the site, but it's handled now." He surveyed the scene of us cleaning together and his face lit up like Christmas morning. "Look at you two, already acting like family." Camille stood gracefully, disposing of the broken porcelain. "Your mother is wonderful, Sherry. So warm and welcoming. I feel very lucky." She was good, professionally good. Every gesture, every expression, every carefully chosen word was designed to reinforce the narrative she built. The grateful foreign girl, charmed by American family values and eager to belong. I found my voice somehow. "Well, aren't you sweet? David's right, you do feel like family already." We settled into the living room with coffee while Camille entertained us with what I now realized were carefully crafted stories about her life in France. The struggling artist's childhood, The difficult past that supposedly made her cherish David's stability. The dreams of building a life in America with the right partner. Every word was calculated. Each line was designed to trigger David's protective instincts and feed his American savior complex. And it was working perfectly. My son hung on every syllable, his eyes soft with the kind of love that makes smart men do incredibly stupid things. Tell mom about the visa situation, David prompted gently. She might have some insights. She's always been good at navigating bureaucracy. Camille's eyes flickered almost imperceptibly, but her smile never wavered. Oh, it's complicated, but not urgent, she said smoothly. The tourist visa is good for several more months. And David has been helping me understand the process for more permanent arrangements. The pause was perfectly timed, letting David fill in the romantic implications without her having to lie outright. Masterful. We're thinking about engagement soon, David added, reaching for her hand, once Camille settled and comfortable with the idea of staying permanently. Oh, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. When you know, I suppose. Camille ducked her head modestly. I never expected to find someone like David. Sometimes the heart surprises us, though. The heart had definitely been surprised tonight, just not in the way she meant. As the evening wound down and David walked Camille to her car, I stood at the window watching them embrace. She said something that made him laugh, probably spinning another beautiful lie about their future together. He looked so happy, so hopeful, so completely unaware that the woman in his arms saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone to American citizenship, and to whatever money she could extract from our family. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my late husband's study, surrounded by 40 years of financial documents and family records, trying to understand exactly what Camille thought she was targeting. Robert had been a careful man, methodical about security. Our assets weren't flashy, but they were substantial. The house alone was worth close to $800,000, sitting on 2 acres in one of Austin's most desirable neighborhoods. The investment portfolios, retirement accounts, and life insurance policies painted a picture of comfortable, upper-middle-class wealth. Nothing extravagant, but certainly enough to tempt someone with Camille's apparent agenda. What chilled me most was how efficiently she had assessed our situation. One dinner and she had already calculated inheritance angles and timeline strategies. This wasn't impulsive opportunism. This was professional predation. By dawn, I had made 2 decisions. First, I would not tell David what I'd overheard, not yet. He was so deeply infatuated that any accusation from me would only drive him closer to her, casting me as the jealous mother who couldn't accept her son's happiness. I'd seen enough Lifetime movies to know how that story ended. Second, I needed to know exactly who Camille Dubois really was. I started with the basics: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Her social media presence was polished but thin, mostly photos from the last 18 months. No deep history, no childhood friends or family members tagged in old posts. The few pictures from France were generic tourist shots that could have been taken by anyone. Her LinkedIn claimed she worked in hospitality management in Paris, but the company names were vague and there were no colleague connections or recommendations. For someone supposedly in her late 20s with a career in hospitality, her professional network was remarkably sparse. I was deep in internet rabbit holes when my phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen and my heart clenched with guilt. How do you talk to your child when you know something that will devastate them, but can't prove it yet? Morning, Mom, thanks again for last night. Camille couldn't stop talking about how wonderful you were. I bet she couldn't. She's lovely. Sweetheart. I can see why you're so taken with her. I'm thinking about proposing soon, he said, his voice bright with excitement. Maybe Christmas. I know it's fast, but when it's right, it's right. Christmas 2 months away. My stomach nodded. That's wonderful news, David. Have you thought about what kind of proposal? Where you might do it? As he chatted about his romantic plans, I was silently calculating timelines. If they married quickly after the holidays, she'd have her green card application filed by spring. 2 years later, she'd be eligible for permanent residency. 2 years after that, full citizenship, then the divorce. Carefully timed to maximize her take from community property. For years, she was planning to systematically destroy my son's life over 4 years. Mom, you still there? Sorry, darling. Just thinking about how happy this makes me, I said, forcing a smile he couldn't see. The lie came easier than I expected. Have you met her family yet? Her parents? Not in person, David said, but we video chat with them sometimes. They live in Marseilles. Her father's a retired teacher, her mother works in local government. Very traditional family, which is why she's being careful about the engagement timeline. They want to meet me properly first. Traditional family. If they truly existed, they were probably horrified by their daughter's immigration fraud scheme. Or maybe they weren't on it. Quietly coaching her through her long-distance destruction of an American family. That sounds reasonable, I said carefully. Maybe you should visit them before proposing. Really understand where she comes from actually, they're planning to visit us next month. David replied. Camille wanted them to meet you before we make anything official. She values family approval, of course she did. Meet the Marks family, charm the parents. Establish herself as the perfect future daughter-in-law. Then spring the engagement and rush toward marriage. Before anyone had time to ask difficult questions after David hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen, feeling the weight of impossible choices. I could hire a private investigator, but that felt like crossing a line. That might damage my relationship with David no matter what we found. I could confront Camille directly, but she was clearly skilled at manipulation. And all I had was an overheard phone conversation. Or I could be patient. Play the long game. Let her think she was winning while I quietly gathered the information. I needed to expose her completely. That's when I remembered my sister's youngest daughter, Claire, who worked for the State Department and Visa Services. Family connections can be remarkably useful when you need to understand immigration fraud. And Margaret, you're putting me in a very difficult position, Claire said. Her voice careful over the phone. We were on a sister lunch date at my favorite cafe. Though I wasn't paying much attention to my salad, I'm not asking you to do anything inappropriate, I said, stirring my iced tea slowly. I just want to understand the general process. Educational purposes, Claire laughed despite herself. Educational purposes, right? And this has nothing to do with David's mysterious French girlfriend. You always were too smart for your own good. I leaned back in my chair, studying my niece's face. Claire had inherited the family's sharp instincts and no-nonsense attitude. If anyone could help me navigate this, it was her. Tell me what you know, she said quietly. Everything, so I did. The overheard phone conversation, the thin social media presence, the convenient backstory that hid all of David's emotional triggers. Claire listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each detail. There are red flags, she admitted when I finished. The timeline is aggressive. The background check seems superficial. And frankly, the whole narrative sounds like something from the manual on marriage fraud indicators. There's a manual? Oh, honey, there are several. Immigration fraud is a cottage industry, and we see variations of this pattern constantly. The difference is usually the sophistication level. Claire pulled out her phone and showed me a government website. Look at this checklist. How many boxes does she tick? As we went through the indicators together, my heart sank. Camille wasn't just suspicious, she was practically a case study in marriage fraud. Red flags everywhere, rushed timeline, financial motivation, limited verifiable background, an age gap that favored the immigrant, emotional manipulation of the American partner. The thing is, Claire continued, knowing something and proving it are very different challenges. These people are professionals. They've studied American men. They know exactly which buttons to push, and they're very good at covering their tracks. So, what would you do? I asked. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Officially, I'd advise David to slow down, do proper due diligence, and insist on meeting her family in France before making any commitments. And unofficially, I'd gather evidence, document everything, and I'd be prepared for the possibility that by the time you have proof, it might be too late to prevent the marriage, but not too late to minimize the damage. My son's broken heart, his financial losses, his faith in love itself. The ripple effects could last years, maybe decades. Some wounds never fully heal. There's something else you should know, Claire said carefully. If she's doing this professionally, David probably isn't her first target. These operations often work the same territories, use similar methods. There might be other victims, other sons, other families destroyed by Camille's calculated charm. The thought filled me with a cold fury I'd never felt before. How would I find them? Very carefully, Claire warned. And completely legally. But if there are patterns of behavior, they leave traces. Immigration applications, marriage records, divorce proceedings, it's all public information if you know where to look. By the time we finished lunch, I had a plan. It wasn't a nice plan, and it wasn't a simple plan. But it was thorough. If Camille Dubois was a professional con artist, she was about to discover that Margaret Thompson wasn't nearly as harmless as she appeared. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to a private investigator. Claire recommended someone who specialized in background verification with impeccable discretion. The second call I made was to my attorney to update my will and set up some extra financial protections. It had nothing to do with Camille specifically and everything to do with being ready for any outcome. The third call was the most important. David, sweetheart, I've been thinking about what you said about Camille's parents visiting next month. Yeah, what about it? Well, I'd love to host them for dinner. A proper welcome to the family. And you know what? I think I should brush up on my French before they arrive. Maybe take a refresher course. I'd hate for them to think I wasn't making an effort. The private investigator's name was Marcus Webb, and he looked nothing like what I'd imagined. No trench coat, no fedora. Just a mild-mannered man in his 50s who could have been anyone's accountant, which, as it turned out, was exactly the point. The best investigations happen when nobody realizes they're being investigated, he explained, settling into the chair across from my kitchen table with a manila folder and a cup of coffee. Especially in cases like this, where the subject is already hyper-aware of potential scrutiny. It had been 2 weeks since I'd hired him, and the preliminary results were enlightening in the worst possible way. Let's start with what we know for certain, Marcus said, opening his folder. Camille Dubois entered the United States on a tourist visa 8 months ago. The address she listed on her arrival documents is a short-term rental apartment that she vacated after 6 weeks right around the time she would have met your son, so she came here specifically to find a husband? It's looking that way. The pattern suggests systematic targeting rather than an organic relationship. He pulled out a series of photographs. These are from her social media activity. In the month before she left France, she was researching American dating apps, joining international relationship sites, and participating in forums about American immigration law. The photos showed Camille at her laptop in Paris cafes, always alone, always working on something. Even in the candid shots, there was a calculating glint in her eyes. Here's where it gets interesting, Marcus continued. The company she claims to have worked for in Paris existed, but it went out of business 3 years ago. The references she provided David are fake. The phone numbers redirect to a voice service that plays pre-recorded messages. My coffee grew cold as Marcus laid out the evidence of Camille's deception. Fabricated employment history. No verifiable address in France for the past 2 years. And most damning of all, a pattern of social media connections, suggesting she'd been in contact with other American men before settling on David. There's more, Marcus said quietly. I found evidence of at least 2 previous attempts at marriage-based immigration fraud. Different names, different stories, but the same face. And the same methods. He slid 2 more photographs across the table. The first showed Camille with a man in his 40s outside a courthouse in Nevada. The second was from a wedding announcement in a small-town newspaper in Colorado, featuring Marie Fontaine and her American husband. Both marriages lasted less than 2 years. Both ended in divorce with significant financial settlements. Both men are now dealing with debt and emotional trauma. While she disappeared with American citizenship and their assets, I stared at the photographs. Feeling sick. David doesn't know, I whispered. David knows what she's told him, which is a carefully constructed fiction. But Margaret, Marcus said, leaning forward, there's something else you need to understand. This isn't just fraud. It's a criminal enterprise. We're dealing with someone who has destroyed multiple families and shows no signs of stopping. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in around us. What do I do with this information? That depends on what kind of outcome you want, Marcus replied, his expression serious. Do you want to save David from making a terrible mistake? Or do you want to ensure Camille faces consequences for what she's already done? Both, I said without hesitation. I want both. Then we need to be very strategic. Moving too fast could spook her into disappearing before David realizes what's happening. Moving too slow means watching the fraud proceed on schedule. Marcus pulled out a timeline chart. She's planning to introduce her parents next week, probably actors hired to play the role. The engagement will happen shortly after that, with a Christmas proposal that gives them just enough time for a New Year's wedding. New Year's tax advantages, immigration timing, and emotional manipulation, all wrapped up in romantic symbolism. It's textbook. He closed his folder and looked me directly in the eye. The question is, are you prepared to play a longer game than she is? That evening, I sat in my garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere across town, David was probably having dinner with his fraudulent fiancée, discussing wedding plans and dreaming about their future together. And next week, I would sit across from fake parents, speaking my rusty French and pretending to believe in a love story that was nothing more than an elaborate con. But Camille Dubois had made one fatal miscalculation when she targeted our family. She believed a 64-year-old widow would be easy to fool, too polite to question anything, too grateful for her son's happiness to look too closely at its source. She was about to learn how dangerous that assumption could be. The doorbell rang exactly at 6 o'clock. I smoothed my dress one last time before opening the door. Camille stood on my porch, flanked by an elegant older couple who looked like they'd been handpicked by a casting director. To play sophisticated French parents, Mrs. Thompson, Camille said brightly, her smile warm and seemingly genuine. I'd like you to meet my parents, Henry and Margot Dubois. Henry stepped forward with old-world charm, taking my hand and kissing it lightly. Madam Thompson, we are honored to meet the mother of the man who has captured our daughter's heart, he said, his French accent smooth and flawless exactly what you'd expect from a retired teacher from Marseilles. Margot embraced me warmly, smelling faintly of expensive perfume and spoke in rapid, enthusiastic French about how wonderful it was to finally meet me. They were good professional level good, please come in, I replied in deliberately rusty French. Forgive my poor pronunciation. It's been many years since I've spoken your beautiful language. The effect was immediate. Camille's eyes flickered with something close to concern, while her parents exchanged the briefest glance. They hadn't expected me to speak French at all, much less to notice their accents, which were unmistakably Parisian, not Marseilles. David arrived soon after with wine and flowers, glowing with happiness. Aren't they wonderful, Mom? I feel like I've gained a whole new family, he said as the evening unfolded. I played my role perfectly, the charmed future-in-law delighted with these lovely people. I asked gentle questions about their life in France, praised Camille, and expressed how thrilled I was that David had found someone with such a strong family foundation. But I was also listening, and what I heard confirmed every suspicion Marcus Webb had uncovered. Henry's stories about his teaching career were vague and generic, the kind anyone could piece together from internet research. Margaret's descriptions of her government work contradicted themselves within the same conversation. Most telling of all, when they spoke to each other in French thinking I couldn't follow, they revealed details that clearly belonged to Paris, not Marseilles. Pass the salt, would you? Margot said in French. This American food is so bland, at least the wine is decent, Henry replied. Though I miss proper cheese. These Americans have no palate. Meanwhile, in English, they were all smiles, praising my cooking and gushing about American hospitality. The final confirmation came during dessert. David had stepped into the kitchen to help me serve coffee, when Camille leaned toward her fake parents and spoke quickly in French. She's harmless but not stupid, she warned. Keep the details consistent and don't get too comfortable. We're almost at the finish line. The son is completely hooked, Henry replied. When do you want to set the proposal timeline? Next week. Christmas Eve engagement, New Year's wedding. Emotional timing that makes it hard for anyone to object. They thought they were speaking privately. They thought their secret was safe. They had no idea the harmless American widow serving them coffee and homemade apple pie understood every calculated word. As the evening wound down, Margot clasped my hands warmly. We are so grateful that our Camille found David, she said sweetly. Family is everything. Don't you agree? Oh, absolutely, I answered with a serene smile. Family is the most important thing in the world. We'd do anything to protect the people we love. After they left, David stayed behind, helping me clean up and practically bubbling with excitement. They're amazing, aren't they? So warm and genuine. I can see where Camille gets her character, he said. They're certainly impressive, I agreed, keeping my voice steady. Very polished. I'm thinking about proposing next week, he added, almost shy. Christmas Eve, like in the movies. What do you think? I turned away, pretending to load the dishwasher so he wouldn't see the look on my face. I think she's a very lucky woman to have found you, sweetheart, I said softly. What I was really thinking was that Camille Dubois had just made her second crucial mistake. The first was underestimating me. The second was revealing her timeline while I still had the power to destroy it. Christmas Eve was 8 days away. She had 8 days to believe she was winning. I had 8 days to make sure she lost everything that night. I called Marcus Webb and gave him 3 words: accelerate the timeline. Marcus arrived at my house the next morning with a briefcase full of evidence and a plan that was both elegant and ruthless. We move tomorrow, he said, spreading documents across my dining room table. Christmas Eve, just before David's planned proposal. Maximum emotional impact. Minimum chance for her to escape. The evidence was devastating. Bank records showed wire transfers from Camille's previous victims. Immigration documents revealed 3 different identities. Photographs captured her with other men, other families she'd already destroyed. But the most damning of all were the recorded phone calls, conversations between Camille and her real handler, not fake parents. A criminal organization that specialized in marriage fraud. She's not just a con artist, Marcus explained. She's part of a network. They identify targets, create backstories, provide supporting actors when needed, and take a percentage of whatever assets they can extract. I studied a photograph of Camille with a man in his 50s, standing outside a courthouse in Miami. The timestamp was just 18 months old. How many families has she destroyed? Ones we can actually prove. I asked. 7, Marcus said grimly. But the pattern suggests there are more. He slid a financial analysis across the table. And my stomach turned. Conservative estimate she's stolen over $2 million from American men in the past 5 years. 2 million. 7 families. And David was supposed to be number 8. Here's what we're going to do, Marcus continued. Tomorrow evening, when David brings Camille here for Christmas Eve dinner before the proposal, we're going to have some unexpected guests. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Agent Sarah Chen from Immigration and Customs Enforcement would arrive during dinner, posing as a routine follow-up on Camille's visa status. In reality, she'd be arresting Camille for immigration fraud based on the evidence Marcus had compiled. The timing is crucial, Marcus warned. Too early and she might run. Too late and David gets engaged to someone who's about to be arrested. We need to thread the needle perfectly. That afternoon, I moved through Christmas Eve preparations like an actress rehearsing for the performance of her life. Cooking David's favorite meal, setting the table with my grandmother's china, wrapping presents that would never be opened. Every domestic detail felt surreal. Knowing what was coming, David called around 4, his voice bright with nervous excitement. Mom, we'll be there at 6. I'm going to propose after dinner, just like we planned. I've got the ring and everything, the ring. My grandmother's engagement ring passed down through 3 generations of Thompson women now. Destined for a criminal who saw David as nothing more than a paycheck. That sounds perfect. Sweetheart, I managed. I can't wait to celebrate with you both. At 5:45, the doorbell rang. Agent Chen stood on my porch, dressed in professional attire that could pass for a dinner party guest. She was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes that turned steely when she discussed Camille's crimes. We'll wait until after the main course, she said quietly. Let her get comfortable. Let her think she's safe. Then I'll present my credentials and place her under arrest. What about David? I asked. He'll be hurt and angry probably at you at first for not telling him sooner, she said gently. But he'll understand eventually. The alternative is watching her destroy him financially and emotionally over the next 2 years. At exactly 6 o'clock, David's car pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I watched him take Camille's hand, probably giving her last-minute reassurance about the proposal. She looked radiant, confident, completely unaware that her criminal career was about to end in my dining room. Showtime. Agent Chen murmured, Mrs. Thompson. Dinner smells absolutely wonderful, Camille said as they stepped inside, kissing my cheeks in the French style. She wore an elegant red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Every inch the sophisticated European woman about to become an American bride. David was practically vibrating with nervous energy, patting his jacket pocket where the ring box created a telltale bulge. Mom, I think this might be our best Christmas Eve ever, he said. If only he knew. Agent Chen had positioned herself in the living room, casually pretending to read a magazine I'd strategically placed there. To David and Camille, she looked like any family friend who'd stopped by for the holidays. Who's your guest? David asked, glancing toward the living room. Oh, that's Sarah, my neighbor's niece, I said smoothly. She's visiting for the holidays and didn't have anywhere to go tonight. I hope you don't mind that I invited her. Camille's smile never wavered, but I caught the flicker of calculation in her eyes. An unexpected witness to the proposal wasn't ideal, but it wasn't alarming either. Just another variable to manage in her carefully orchestrated evening. Dinner unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. David talked about his work, his plans for the new year, and his excitement about building a life with Camille. She responded with perfect warmth, asking thoughtful questions and making gentle jokes that had him laughing, falling deeper under her spell with every passing moment. Meanwhile, Agent Chen played her part flawlessly, making small talk about her job in government consulting and complimenting Camille's accent, her dress, and her charming stories about life in France. The trap was set. Camille had no idea she was walking straight into it. To anyone watching, it looked like a lovely family dinner with one extra guest. But I was watching Camille carefully. As the evening wore on, subtle shifts betrayed her. Her eyes flicked toward Agent Chen when she thought no one was looking. Her shoulders tightened whenever Chen asked a casual question about her background. There was the faintest pause before she answered anything about her visa status. Professional criminals develop instincts about law enforcement. Something about Agent Chen was setting off Camille's internal alarms. She couldn't pinpoint the threat yet, but she sensed danger. This has been lovely, Camille said as we finished the main course. But perhaps we should think about heading home soon. It's getting late. David looked confused. But we haven't had dessert yet and I thought we might exchange gifts, of course, Camille said quickly, flashing a bright smile. I'm just thinking about the drive home in this weather. There was no weather. It was a clear, calm December night. But Camille wanted to leave, and she wanted to leave now. Agent Chen stood up casually. Actually, before anyone goes anywhere, I should probably introduce myself properly. She pulled out her credentials, her voice suddenly firm and official. Agent Sarah Chen, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Miss Du Bois, I need to speak with you about some discrepancies in your visa documentation. The transformation in Camille was instantaneous and chilling. The warm, charming woman vanished. What replaced her was cold, calculating, and deadly still. Her French accent disappeared entirely, replaced by flawless American English. I don't know what you're talking about, she said evenly. My documentation is completely in order. David stared between them, confusion and fear warring on his face. What's going on? What discrepancies? Agent Chen calmly pulled out her phone and showed him photographs Marcus had compiled. Mr. Thompson, the woman you know as Camille Du Bois is actually named Christina Marsh. She's wanted for immigration fraud, identity theft, and multiple counts of marriage. Fraud across 7 states. The ring box slipped from David's numb fingers and hit the hardwood floor with a sound like breaking dreams. The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then David exploded. What the hell is this? He spun toward me, his eyes blazing with betrayal and fury. You knew and you didn't tell me, David. Please let me explain. Explain what? His voice cracked. That you've been investigating the woman I love behind my back? That you've been lying to me for weeks? Pain cut through every word. I trusted you, Mom. I brought her here because I trusted your judgment, and this is what you do. Camille Christina had gone very still, her mind clearly racing through escape routes. But Agent Chen stood between her and the door, and backup officers were already outside. Mr. Thompson, Agent Chen said gently, I know this is shocking, but your mother likely saved you from years of financial and emotional devastation. The woman you know as Camille has defrauded 7 other men out of nearly $2 million. David shook his head violently. No, you're wrong. This is some kind of mistake. Camille isn't. She wouldn't. He turned desperately to her. Tell them they're wrong. Tell them this is all some horrible mix-up. For a moment, I thought she might keep up the act, try one final manipulation to keep her hold on David's heart. But then she looked at the evidence on Agent Chen's phone, calculated the odds, and made a different choice. She laughed. It was a cold, amused sound with none of Camille's musical French lilt when she spoke. Her voice was flat, American, and utterly without remorse. Oh, David, you poor, sweet, stupid man. She picked up her wine glass and sipped it like this was all a casual conversation about the weather. Did you really think someone like me would fall for someone like you without an ulterior motive? David went pale. What? You're boring, David, predictable. The kind of man who thinks buying flowers and opening doors makes him irresistible. To sophisticated European women, she gestured dismissively. I've played this role so many times I could do it in my sleep. Vulnerable foreign girl, charmed by American stability, grateful for protection and security. It works every single time. The cruelty was breathtaking. She wasn't just confessing, she was destroying him for sport. The accent, the stories about France. The whole romantic narrative, every bit of it was research and performance. I spent 3 weeks studying your social media, your interests, your psychological profile before I ever approached you at that coffee shop. She smiled, cold and triumphant. Did you think it was coincidence that I was reading your favorite book when we met? David sat down heavily as though his legs could no longer hold him. The book you said a friend recommended. Amazon reviews and customer purchase patterns. She cut in smoothly. I bought 5 books I knew would appeal to lonely, divorced men in their 30s who were looking for an intellectual connection. She shrugged. Yours was the easiest mark in the coffee shop that day. Agent Chen moved closer, handcuffs ready. Christina Marsh, you're under arrest for immigration fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit marriage fraud. But Christina wasn't finished with her performance. She turned to me, her eyes full of pure hatred. You think you've won something, old woman? You've destroyed your relationship with your son to stop something that was always going to end anyway. I would have divorced him in 2 years, taken my cut, and disappeared. Now he'll spend the rest of his life wondering if every woman who shows interest in him is just another con artist. She turned back to David, who was staring at her like she was a stranger because, of course, she was. Your mother didn't save you, David. She just ensured that you'll never trust love again. Agent Chen led Christina away in handcuffs, but not before one last revelation that chilled me to the bone. Wait. Christina called out as they reached the front door. Don't you want to know about the real Camille Du Bois? Agent Chen paused. What about her? Christina's smile was vicious. She's real. 28 years old, lives in Marseilles with her parents. Works in hotel management just like I claimed. I studied her social media for months, stole her identity piece by piece, and built my cover story around her actual life, my blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying there's a real woman in France who has no idea her identity was stolen, who might now be getting visits from American immigration officials asking questions about her fictional boyfriend and his family. Her eyes glittered with malice. I'm saying your investigation might have just destroyed an innocent person's life. Along with your sons. The front door closed behind them, leaving David and me alone in the wreckage of Christmas Eve dinner. He sat motionless at the dining room table, staring at the scattered evidence of his shattered fairy tale. Is it true? He asked quietly. What she said about the real Camille? I sank into the chair across from him, suddenly feeling every one of my 64 years. I don't know. Marcus, the investigator I hired, he'll have to look into it. Marcus? David's voice was flat. How long have you known? 3 weeks. Since the night she called me an ugly cow in French, thinking I couldn't understand her. For the first time since Agent Chen had revealed the truth, David looked directly at me. She called you what? She was on the phone with someone speaking French, explaining how she was going to manipulate you into marriage and then divorce you for money and citizenship. I heard everything. David was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a bitter sound, but not entirely humorless. An ugly cow. That's actually pretty accurate considering how she played me, David. No, she's right about one thing. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again. He stood up, moving to the window where he could see Agent Chen's car driving away. 3 weeks, Mom. You knew for 3 weeks that the woman I loved was planning to destroy my life. And you didn't tell me. You wouldn't have believed me. Maybe not. But you could have tried. He turned back to me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, disappointment so deep it looked like grief. Instead, you orchestrated this whole evening. You let me make a fool of myself. You let me get excited about proposing. You brought her into our family home for one final performance. Before you brought it all crashing down. He was right, and we both knew it. I could have handled this differently, found a way to warn him, to protect him from the public humiliation of being arrested in front of the woman who'd been systematically destroying his life. I was trying to protect you, I said weakly. By lying to me? By investigating behind my back? By treating me like I was too stupid to handle the truth? David picked up the ring box from the floor, staring at it like it was something toxic. This was Grandma's ring. Yes, she would have worn it, taken it with her when she divorced me. Grandma's ring would have ended up in some pawn shop or sold online to fund her next con. The thought hadn't occurred to me before, but it hit like a physical blow for generations of family history reduced to criminal profit. David pocketed the ring box and headed for the door. I need some time to process this. David, wait. I love you, Mom, but I can't be around you right now. Every time I look at you, I'm going to think about how you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. The door closed quietly behind him, leaving me alone with the remains of Christmas Eve dinner and the crushing weight of choices that had been both completely right and utterly devastating. But Christina had made one final mistake in her parting shot. She'd revealed the existence of the real Camille Dubois, which meant there was still one more chapter to this story, one more chance to find something redemptive in the wreckage. That night, I called Marcus Webb with new instructions: find the real Camille and figure out how to make this right. 2 months later, I was standing in the international arrivals terminal at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, holding a sign with Camille Dubois written in my best handwriting. The real Camille Dubois was exactly as Christina had described her: 28, petite, with the kind of effortless French style that simply can't be faked. But where Christina had been calculating and cold beneath her charm, the real Camille radiated genuine warmth. Mrs. Thompson? She asked in accented English, approaching cautiously. I am Camille. The real one, I think. I couldn't help smiling. Yes, you're definitely the real one. Thank you for coming. What had started as damage control quickly became something far more meaningful. Marcus's investigation had revealed that Christina's identity theft had indeed caused serious problems for the real Camille. French authorities had questioned her about her fictional American boyfriend. Her bank accounts had been frozen pending investigation, and her reputation in her small community had been damaged by association with international fraud. But more than that, we discovered Camille was facing her own family crisis. Her mother was battling cancer, and the medical bills were threatening to bankrupt the family. The money I'd offered to bring her to Austin for a face-to-face explanation had been gratefully accepted as a chance to earn additional income during a desperate time. I still don't understand, Camille said as we walked toward my car. Why would someone pretend to be me? My life is not so interesting. It was perfect for her purposes, I explained. Real enough to be verifiable, ordinary enough not to raise suspicions. She studied your social media. learned about your work, your family, your interests, and then used all of it to create a cover story over the next 3 days. I got to know the woman my son should have met instead of the criminal who had nearly destroyed his life. Camille was funny, intelligent, and refreshingly honest about her own struggles and dreams. She was also nursing a broken-hearted relationship that had ended badly 6 months earlier with a man who'd been cheating on her with her best friend. It is strange, she said on her second evening as we sat in my garden sharing a bottle of wine. This woman, she stole my name, my history, even my heartbreak to make her story more believable. It feels like being robbed of yourself. I'm sorry, I said quietly. If I had known there was a real person behind the identity, you would have done the same thing. Camille said firmly. You protected your son. That is what mothers do. David had agreed to meet her on her final day in Austin. He was still barely speaking to me, but his curiosity about the real person behind Christina's lies eventually overcame his anger. They met at the same coffee shop where Christina had first approached him, a detail I found both poetic and slightly heartbreaking. I watched from across the street as they talked for nearly 2 hours, their body language shifting from awkward formality to genuine interest. When David brought her back to the house afterward, something had changed in both of them. She's nothing like her, he said quietly to me while Camille was in the bathroom. Everything that felt artificial about Christina, the two perfect answers. The way she always said exactly what I wanted to hear. Camille is the opposite. She's real. What does that mean? I asked. It means I'm going to drive her to the airport tomorrow, and then I'm going to think very carefully about what I want to do next. What David decided to do next surprised everyone, including himself. 3 weeks after Camille returned to France, he booked a flight to Marseilles. Not for romance, he insisted, but to see for himself the life Christina had stolen and twisted into her fictional narrative. He came back 2 weeks later with a new perspective on trust, love, and the difference between falling for a fantasy and connecting with a real person. I'm not ready for anything serious, he told me over dinner at my house, the first meal we'd shared since Christmas Eve, but Camille and I are going to stay in touch. Maybe visit back and forth, see what develops naturally in us. I asked softly. Are we okay? David was quiet for a moment. You were right to investigate her. You were right to stop the fraud, David said quietly. But you were wrong not to trust me with the truth. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on honesty. Even when honesty is difficult. I understand, I replied. Do you? Because if Camille and I do develop something real, if she eventually moves here, or I move there, I need to know you'll respect our choices. Even if you disagree with them, I promise, I said, and I meant it. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation written in elegant French script. David and Camille had decided to marry in a small ceremony in Provence, surrounded by olive groves and the kind of authentic French countryside that Christina had only ever pretended to know. As I RSVP'd yes with excitement, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us all to this moment. Sometimes the worst deceptions lead to the most honest connections. Sometimes protecting someone means allowing them to make their own mistakes. And sometimes, when you think you're saving one story, you're really beginning an entirely different one. The real Camille Dubois was nothing like her imposter, and that turned out to be exactly what my son needed to learn to trust love again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.